Hi everyone, in this video we are going to practice with our significant figures. So the first thing we're going to do is identify how many significant figures that we have, and then the second, third, and fourth problem are going to be actually using calculations and then determining how many sig figs we can actually use in the problem. So let's start off very, very simple. In these 5 different cases, how many sig figs are there total just in those numbers? You don't have to add, don't divide, don't do anything, just tell me in each of those 5 numbers how many sig figs are there. Go. Alright, did you get an answer? Hopefully you did. This is the easiest problem in this video, so if you had trouble here, it's probably going to be kind of hard for you to do the next couple problems, so make sure that this next 5 things make sense to you, okay? Alright, so the first thing we have is 246.32. If there's ever a non-zero number, it is significant. So significant, 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 significant. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We definitely have 5 sig figs in that number. All right, so now if you have a non-zero number, it's definitely significant. So that 1 is definitely significant. The zeros are the tricky part. So we have to figure out where is the 0. And so for us, luckily on this one, all 4 of these are together and they're all past the decimal. But the most important thing is that they're past the decimal after a significant digit. So that means that all 4 of these are considered to be significant. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, 5 significant figures in that specific number. All right, moving on. For the next one, we know for sure that we have 1 significant digit. Now we're trying to figure out what are all these other zeros in front of it. So we have a 0 in front of the decimal. If there's no significant digit here, then this is definitely not significant. Then we have 3 zeros that are after the decimal, but again, there's no significant digit here, so none of these 3 values are considered significant. So if you were to ask me how many sig figs are in this number, I would say 1, and it's just that 1 right there, okay? All right, next one. How many significant figures in this next number? So the 3 is always significant, 2 is always significant. Now we've got some zeros. So they are after significant digits, so that's a good sign, but we need to figure out what's going on with the decimal. Now remember, if it's ever drawn in, if it's written there, it's there for a reason. It's telling you, do not ignore these 3 zeros. These 3 zeros are very much significant. So we have 1, 2, and 3 very significant digits there. So we add those to our 3 and our 2, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 significant figures in that number. Same number as the last one, but now we do not have that decimal written right there. So there's nothing there for us to tell us about those zeros, okay? So just like before, 3 and 2, definitely significant. Now we've got our 3 zeros that are after significant figures, but there is no decimal right here, okay? There's nothing. So all that means is that these 3 values are not significant. They are not important. There's no decimal point, so they're not important. So here, if you were to ask me, I would say the 3 is important, the 2 is important, only 2 sig figs in that number. Hopefully that makes sense. If this was difficult, you need to go back and practice just determining sig figs first before you even have a shot at doing well in the next problem. So we're going to focus on 2 addition problems here. So these are going to follow your addition subtraction rules. So remember, determine sig figs, do the math, then apply sig figs. Go. All right, how'd you do? Hopefully you got your answers correctly, but we'll see here. So these are addition subtraction rules. So what we need to do is figure out the number of significant figures past the decimal. So for this one, we have 1, 2, 3 sig figs past the decimal. For this one, we just have 1 sig fig past the decimal. And here we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 sig figs past the decimal. So this one right here is telling us that we are only allowed 1 significant figure past the decimal. All right, so that was step 1. Step 2, we actually do the math. So if we add those 3 numbers together, just spit them in your calculator would tell us that you have a total value of 169.0237. Now, we're only allowed 1 significant figure past the decimal, so all of this is considered significant. We're not going to even mess with that. We're only concerned with the numbers past the decimal. We're only allowed 1, so that would give us that 0. So now again, you cut off right here, but you have to look at that number to decide, do we round up, do we round down? It's a 2. 2 is boring, pretty low. We don't do anything fancy with it, so if we have this done this properly and report it with sig figs, your accurate number would be 169.0. Okay, so that's the correct answer. Let's move on to the second one. So again, determine sig figs first. 1 sig fig past the decimal, 1, 2, 3, 4 sig figs past the decimal, and 1, 2 sig figs past the decimal. So this time, this number is going to dictate it. And again, we are only allowed to go 1 place past the decimal. So we determine sig figs. Now we do the math. So this number is 2026.8378. We have to apply sig figs. We can only do 1 number past the decimal. So these are all going to be significant. We only can have 1 here. We draw our cutoff. Our 3 is small. It's not going to force us to bump up. So our final answer here is 2026.8. Okay, so that's your correct answer. Again, hopefully this is making sense. You figure out sig figs, then do the math, then apply sig figs at the very end. That's addition, subtraction. We have different rules when we do multiplication and division. So just because, I don't know, that doesn't really look very clear to me, that's supposed to be multiplication and that's supposed to be division. So hopefully that's clear. Do these problems and let's meet on the other end. All right, did you get an answer? This is definitely the same process as before, except for we don't care with how many sig figs are past the decimal, in front of the decimal. We only care about total number of sig figs whenever you do multiplication division. So let's start off with this first one with our multiplication. We see that we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 sig figs here. We see for the next one, this is not significant, not significant, this one is, this one is. So we have 2 sig figs total. That is definitely going to help us determine how many sig figs we can have in our final answer. All right, so now let's multiply these two numbers together in our calculator. If we do that properly, we end up with something like 0.8104. We can only have 2 sig figs total. This 0 is not significant in the front, so we've got 1, 2, that's our cutoff. 0 is definitely small, we're not going to round up at all. Our final answer here would be 0.81. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, we're going to repeat this process for the second one. Now for here, we have to figure out how many sig figs we have. 1, 2, 3, and 4 sig figs in this first number. 1, 2, 3, and 4 sig figs in the second number. So it doesn't matter. We can use either one of these because they both have 4 sig figs, and that's all we're going to be allowed to have in our final answer. So now let's put these together. We would have a correct number of 4252.485089. That's what our calculator tells us. We have all this garbage. Obviously, that's too many digits. We need to figure out a proper number. We're only allowed 4 sig figs, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's our cutoff. So we're going to write this out as 4252. Pretty straightforward. All right, same process. Determine sig figs, do the math, apply sig figs. Now, can you do it if we combine both methods? So you have addition on the top, and then you're going to do a division problem. Try it. All right, so if you had trouble with this, that's totally okay. We're going to work through this one together. The very first thing you do is deal with your parentheses. So here, what we're seeing is that we need to do an addition problem first. So addition problem, our rules are how many points past the decimal. Well, this one doesn't even have a point past the decimal. So we have 0 sig figs right here, okay? So this one is going to be 0. That's going to be pretty determining here. Here we have 1, 2, and 3. Here we have 1, 2, and 3. This one has 0. That's going to be the most important thing. All right, so let's do our math. We're going to add these 3 numbers together. If you do that properly, you get something like 10328.26. Now we can only have 0 significant figures past the decimal. So right away you're going to go like this, cut that number off. You're only allowed to have these values. So if we do this properly, I'm going to write down here, we'd end up with something like 10328. All right, so now we have that number, but the most important thing is that you have to remember that if you're actually going through to do your next math problem, you can't just get rid of that 0.26. You cannot just ignore it and move on. That is not okay. You still have to keep that 0.26 in your number, but you need to recall that you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant digits in this number, especially because now we're moving on to division. Division follows that multiplication division rules, and so for sig figs, we just care with total number of sig figs. So what we need to do is look at this number and realize, yeah, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant figures. This is not, and that is not significant as dictated by our number up there in the corner. Now for our bottom one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 significant figures. So that is definitely greater than 5, so we're going to cross that one out. This number is going to dictate how many sig figs we can actually have. All right, so we're going to do this whole number. 10,328.26 divided by 294.162. If you do that properly, you get a number that is 35 0.11078929. That's what your calculator says, but you have to apply Sig Figs. You're only allowed 5 significant digits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your cutoff. So you rewrite it, 35.11. Now stop. You have to look at this number. This is a 7. 7 is higher than 5, so that means we have to round that number up, so that becomes a 1. So our final answer for this one is 35.111. Whew, that was a long problem. Hopefully that makes sense. This is definitely the most complicated when you combine your addition and your multiplication, or in either of those two methods. You have to keep it straight. But right here is usually where people mess up. They drop these two values. They said, oh, they're not significant, so they get rid of them, and then they go through the math without using that 0.26. You can't do that. You have to use the full number and just remember what digits are considered significant. Kind of tricky. Practice makes perfect. Do as much as you can. Good luck. Take care of yourself. Drink water.